All right. So first order of business, I just pressed record. So our program this evening is being recorded. And with that being said, if you do need to leave a little bit early this evening or can't finish the program or would like to watch it again, you'll be able to when we post it on our YouTube channel. So do look out for that coming up. So welcome everybody to Nature at Night this evening, where we are going to talk about native plants for your landscape. I'm Lindsay Carlson, the director of the Rushton Conservation Center, which is where I am this evening. I'm not always here, but I'm really glad to show off the space that we miss seeing all of you locals here for programming. So we hope to be back up and running someday soon. But the preserves are wide open. Rushton Farm is here. So please do come out and visit. There's lots going on outside as usual. So we'll get started tonight. We have, in addition to Mike Cranny, who is the preserve manager here at Willistown Conservation Trust, we do have Julie Snell as well, who is co-owner at Redbud Native Plant Nursery. And so the format for the evening, we'll open up with Mike giving us an overview, and then we'll switch over to Julie as well. And again, please share all of your questions down in the chat if you would like. I don't want you to forget anything. And then after the program wraps up, we will go through those and have some more conversation at the end of the program. And a little bit about Willistown Conservation Trust for any newcomers. We are a land trust located just outside of Philadelphia in Southeast Pennsylvania. And in addition to conserving land forever, we also have wonderful program areas, including bird conservation. We have a watershed protection program, in addition to Rushton Farm, where we have admitting people, sorry, into the meeting here. Where we have regenerative farming going on, as well as a CSA that supports just over 100 families. And again, the space is open to visit, so come on out. And last but not least is stewardship, which that is under Mike. So he will certainly talk a lot more about maintaining our wild spaces for habitat. All right, so Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you to get started.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm gonna just share my screen here and get the presentation up. Let me know if everybody, is that coming up okay, Lindsay? All right. All right, so yeah, Lindsay mentioned, my name is Mike Cranny. I'm the preserve manager for Willistown Conservation Trust. And we're going to talk about native plants. So I'll just kind of introduce the idea of native plants, what they are and why they're important. I'm going to talk about kind of how we use native plants on our preserves, and then we can start to get into how that translates to all of you being able to use native plants on your own properties. So before we talk about, I guess first we'll just kind of define what a native plant is. So basically, when it comes to a native plant, it comes down to the idea of where it originally evolved. You know, so for it varies depending on where you are in the world, obviously. So for us, you know, it can be native to the United States, or native to Pennsylvania, or native to, you know, Chester, Philadelphia, Montgomery County, things like that. So you really want to kind of get down to as specific as possible in those terms. You know, we tend to look at nativity and native plants in terms of, for us in Chester County, you know, what has historically been here. We look at the historic native plant communities, you know, what plants have in the past coexisted together, because then they're going to be most successful together. When we talk about native plants in the United States, it's generally thought of as what plants were here before the Europeans colonized and started to bring other plants over. And then those plants that were introduced later, we call non-native. So there's lots of non-native plants that have sort of naturalized. Some of them are fine, they're not a problem at all. But when they do become a problem, then we start to call them invasive plants. So I'll talk a little bit about invasive plants later. But So it just kind of gives you a sense of how we define a native plant, um, but why they're important. So native plants, and we all learned about food webs, back in elementary school. Um, but what really matters in that instance is the types of plants. Plants are the basis of all the food webs, but the type of plant actually matters. If you think about, um, insects and pollinators, they actually really depend on specific types of native plants. They're native plant specialists. They've evolved alongside these specific plants over millennia, um, and developed specific strategies for how they break down plant defenses, the plants that they like to live on, like to eat. So there are tons of insects, pollinators, caterpillars, bees, things specifically like that depend on very specific plants in order to live. Um, this is a picture of a monarch caterpillar. Many of you might recognize, and may know that monarch caterpillars and butterflies specialize on milkweed. So without the milkweed, they can't raise their young, and they can't develop into butterflies. And that's something that we've seen a lot of loss of because of the loss of habitat for the milkweed plant. So, it's not something that people tend to think of, that caterpillars, especially, need specific plants to live, to rear their young, and for their larvae to eat and survive and grow into pollinating butterflies. But it does really matter. Um, so, and then, in terms of the food web, that affects everything, especially the birds. Birds rely heavily on caterpillars as a food source, especially when they're feeding their young. A bird can go around and collect seeds or berries to feed their young or feed themselves, but nothing comes close to the nutritional level of caterpillar when a bird feed their babies. So it's this whole interconnected web that really comes back down to the native plants and how they're supporting that base level of the food web that affects everything else. You see the statistic right here: 1 in every 3 bites of food you take is made possible by pollinators, honeybees, butterflies, and other pollinators that help those plants to survive and proliferate. So it's just that's really some of the main reasons that we focus on native plants and their basis for ensuring the survival of our ecosystems. So in terms of native plants on our preserves, part of our mission is to preserve and manage the natural resources of the Willistown area. So with that in mind, we really strive to preserve and store and recreate native plant habitats and plant communities of this area. So, there's native plants that evolved here, but we also really want to consider the specific benefits and services that those plants and particular habitats can provide. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit about what habitats we choose on our preserves, some of the common habitats that you might see if you visit our preserves, and why we choose them. So meadow habitat is very important. This is something common across our preserves. So this is a habitat that obviously is very beautiful. Lots of it promotes wildflowers, which are great for, again, the insects, the birds who will nest in meadow or use them to forage for insects or berries or seeds. This is a habitat that everything pretty much everywhere in our region, everything wants to become forest. So without hands-on management, every meadow is going to succeed into a forest. Historically, an open fields and meadows like this were kind of maintained either by large herds of large mammals or wildfires, either naturally started fires or Native Americans used fire a lot. And that kind of maintained some of these open spaces and meadows that over the years the plants and animals evolved to rely on. So this is something that we promote and have to manage at our preserves. Similarly, grassland, similar story to how it used to be maintained and how we're losing it now. Development, um, urban sprawl, things like that are obviously reducing this habitat. So it's something that we really need to focus on and something that we curate. Grassland in particular, there are certain species of birds that will only nest in large contiguous spaces of grassland, 80 to 100 acres of contiguous grassland. This is a photo from our Kirkwood Preserve where we have over 80 contiguous acres of grassland. So um, it's really important to, those species of birds that they view those edge habitats as a threat. Larger bird species uh, can can be a threat. They can prey on the young bird nests. So it's important to preserve these areas as habitat for those special types of birds. And then scrub shrub. This is one that people don't think about a lot, but it's also very important for bird species. This is a photo from Ashbridge Preserve where we have nice examples of scrub shrub habitat. This is that sort of intermediate habitat when things start to transition back into forests. So you start to get medium-sized trees and shrubs, dense thickets, and birds are really like hiding and foraging in those types of places. So this, especially with our bird program, this is something that we focus on a lot to be able to support that habitat for birds. And then forest. So the big thing with our forests is we have, trees in the canopy, but the understory has um, really been hurt by white-tailed deer. Um, they're way overpopulated, and they go in and they eat, any small seedling of native plants, or the bucks will rub with their antlers young trees and kill them. Um, so, lots of forests in our area these days, you can go in and it looks more like a park, just, large trees and then open space underneath. And that's really not what we want in terms of, again, the habitat structure for the, um, the, the wildlife that depends on those habitats. Um, so at our preserves, we're really working to, combat the white-tailed deer and restore some of the native understory plants and perennial herbaceous species on the forest floor. So speaking of which, this is when we want to restore and manage some of our native plants. We need to do it by hand. So these are a couple examples of how we use caging to protect some of our native plants from deer. This is just a sort of a large exclosure. This is about 40 by 40 feet at Ashbridge Preserve, where we planted some native shrubs inside and exclose the whole area to keep the plants safe from deer. And on the right, there's some trees planted at Rushton Woods Preserve, each individually caged to keep them protected from deer. So when we're promoting native plants, we need to go out and find areas where we need to add them, areas that might be heavily invaded by non-native species, and where we can add those native trees and shrubs back in. And again, because of the situation as it is now, with non-native plant species being so dominant and white-tailed deer being a problem, it takes a lot of sort of manual or hands-on management to make sure that our native plants can survive. So the non-native plants that I've been talking about. So again, these are, there are non-native plants that aren't much of a problem. They've naturalized, they're there, and they're fine. But then plants become invasive when they start to become a detriment to the health of the ecosystem. And non-native invasive plants can be a real issue. They can, they tend to outcompete native plants. They tend to be aggressive. They will grow up over, especially vines will grow up over native shrubs. They'll tear down branches on trees, and generally just take up space and resources that the native plants need. You can look at some of you might recognize some of these plants, hopefully not from your own garden, but some of them are common garden plants because they are very beautiful, but unfortunately they tend to escape from the garden and naturalize in the woods and then become a big issue for the ecosystem. So if you just start from the top left, and I'll go sort of clockwise, that's you can see barberry, burning bush, Asian bittersweet vine, stiltgrass, honeysuckle vine, lesser celandine, and multiflora rose. These are just a few examples, some of the common things that we see and have to deal with a lot on our preserves, displacing some of our native species and just causing an issue. Some of these species, you might ask, like birds will eat the berries on burning bush or multiflora rose, and that's true, they do. But unfortunately, there's not as nutritionally beneficial to birds. So birds will have to eat more. They'll have to expend more energy to get the same level of nutrition or fat that they need while they're migrating. And there's studies even that show, when there's a large amount of non-native species around, the birds will still prefer the native species for food. So that's sort of the difference between the native and the non-native and the invasive. So thinking about how this translates to your own property, we want to kind of get the idea out there of how to transition away from this, old European style of lawn that's really not ecologically beneficial whatsoever. Obviously lawn, you just have an empty space here where there's no, not only are there no beneficial plants helping our, wildlife, but also lawn is hardly better even than say pavement at stopping and absorbing water runoff. So that just puts more pressure on our streams and our waterways and flash flooding, things like that. So, we kind of want to start to get the idea across of how you can go from a property like this to something more like this. This is an extreme example, of course, but you can just see the difference and, how different that is, how beautiful this is. If you just pick pockets, it's just to show the potential of what your yard can be. So if you think about native habitat loss, you can see this photo of a typical sort of suburban development, and just what an empty space it is in terms of plants and habitat. Lawn in America is the most irritated crop we have. There's about 48 million acres of lawn in the United States alone. We've lost 95% of our pristine places and 30% of birds since 1970. And this loss of habitat is really a big reason for that. Doug Tallamy, I can't believe I haven't brought up Doug Tallamy yet, but he's sort of the godfather of this push for native plants. His book, Bringing Nature Home, I can't recommend enough. It really goes over all these ideas and makes suggestions. And then he's got a new book, Nature's Best Hope, in which he really starts to talk about this idea of, having people start to use their properties, their lawns, and bring them back to nature. Since there's 48 million acres of lawn in the United States, he put out this idea, if we just each commit even half of our lawns to a native habitat, we can create a new 20 million acre homegrown national park. And that's just a really cool idea. Just each of us makes that little change and we can have such a huge impact. So, I kind of talked about the habitats that we choose at our preserves. And we can kind of think about how that might translate and how you can think about what habitat you might want to choose. So again, you can think about what you might have already in your yard, in your space, or what you want to get out of it. So, think about the habitat types again. Maybe if you think about a meadow, this would be great for any kind of open space, somewhere that gets full sun. Maybe you want to replace sort of a traditional garden or some of your lawn and convert to more of a meadow habitat with wildflowers. Or you could think of a shade garden, somewhere where you might have large trees shading out area of your lawn, or a garden in the back of the house that doesn't get any sun, turf or mulched areas that you can fill in with shade plants. Um, some more ideas, shady shrubs and perennial plants. And then scrub shrub, you could have, an old shrubby border in the back of the property that you don't even pay attention to. It's just sort of there, just sort of dividing the property, where you have an old shrub row in the backyard that's just kind of getting overgrown. Maybe that's all non-native, and you can kind of start to bring in some of the native plants and go from sort of an eyesore that you don't think about to something that can really be beneficial. So just thinking about the types of things, types of situations that you have at your own place, and how some of these ideas can be translated even on a smaller scale. So again, we're really rethinking that typical idea of garden design. You look at these situations, and these are attractive, sort of the general idea of what a garden might look like. But you look at these, and it's 3 or 4 different plant species, a bunch of empty space that is just filled in with mulch. I mean, I don't know where we got the idea that we want to look at mulch, or that mulch is attractive, but it would be better if we could fill those spaces and diversify. You look at all these different types of plant species, you have different textures and different things going on. It's much more beneficial, it's attractive. Just thinking about tweaking those ideas that are ingrained in our heads for some reason about typical gardening, and what really it could be. So we start to think about what species to use. We'll come back and talk a little bit about sort of specific species, or things that could be good replacements for common species that you see. But to bring up Doug Tallamy again, he highlights some of these species as his keystone species that are really beneficial for insects, for birds, for the food web as a whole. So if you look at just the number of caterpillars that these different species host, different species of oaks alone host 517 different species of caterpillar. So just these 4 species of trees and these 3 flower species host all of these different species of caterpillar. So these are just something to think about, something to target in terms of how you can get the most bang for your buck, and how to best benefit some of the wildlife. And again, our preserves, you can always come by to our preserves for inspiration. We have, again, at Ashbridge Preserve, there's great scrub shrub habitat, wetland habitat. You can get ideas that way. At our office, we have this beautiful wildflower meadow. Just take a walk through, get inspiration, get ideas for what plants to use. If you go to our Rushton Conservation Center, we have a rain garden there that you can look at, and more meadows in our forests. And we're always here to take questions. So that's just an overview about how we use native plants, why they're important. So from there, I'm going to send it over to Julie and let her introduce you to Redbud and all the good they're doing.
Hi. Thanks, Mike. Now it's time for me to share my screen. Okay. That was a great overview, Mike. And oops, I went ahead. So my name's Julie Snell, and I'm co-owner of Redbud Native Plant Nursery. And my fellow co-owner is Lisa McDonald Haynes. And our contact information is there. And this will repeat at the end so you can see it again. I just wanted to take a few minutes and kind of explain our story a little bit. So Lisa and I, we worked at the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society together for many years. Lisa and I are both trained as landscape architects. And Lisa holds an RLA, and I hold a certified arborist qualification. So anyway, we started at PHS together, and at PHS, if you know anything about it, it really is based in community horticulture, and we worked especially in the public landscapes and Philadelphia green aspect. And so my love of public landscapes and the community process really started there. And when we were there for a while, and then we left to start our own landscape architecture firm called Tend Landscape. And this is a photo from back in the early days of Tend, maybe 2013. And this is us at Redbud with Catherine, you know, when I first met her, actually, and we were just learning about what she was doing, which was really fascinating and interesting. So it's kind of funny to look back at this now to see that progression. So we have Tend, our focus for Tend Landscape was, you know, also public landscapes. So thinking about, you know, how important a public landscape is to a community, right, versus a private landscape. And that was our focus at Tend. And then we ended up, you know, Lisa and I last year, the opportunity to buy Redbud came up, and Lisa and I started to think about it. And, you know, as landscape architects, why we were drawn to that field to begin with is because we love plants. And when you're a landscape architect, sometimes you get further away from working with plants versus closer, because you're behind the desk, you're, you know, behind plans, and oftentimes that's your interaction. And so we thought this was a great opportunity to kind of bring these things back together, you know, to have Redbud and to have Tend, and to bring these things closer in line and have the opportunity to work with plants on a daily basis and work with people who want to learn about those plants. So coming from an educational institution, you know, coming from PHS, education was always a really important factor in both of our work as well. So that sort of line is coming through into Redbud. And so now that we have Redbud, we're thinking, you know, what is a public landscape, right? This is just what Redbud looks like now, just to give you a sense. And here are some pictures from actually today that I just snapped. So we are, you know, breaking into spring, and this is our first full open week for this season. And things are breaking dormancy and coming alive. And so we're excited to have that. But I wanted to kind of draw this comparison for you of, you know, previously at PHS and at Tend, our focus on public landscapes. And so what does it mean now that we are also owners of a retail native plant nursery? And the primary customer of that is a residential customer. And so that's a private landowner. And so I've been thinking about this a lot, and thinking about how those two sides come together and how they work. I was starting to think, I thought of Doug Tallaming, which was already mentioned, right? And his idea of what is the value of a suburban yard and how we can increase that value, right? And it's almost as if you're thinking about what's the greater good that private space can do. And then I was also reminded, I went back and I read, you know, the Sand County Almanac and Aldo Leopold and his idea of the land ethic. And his thinking there is, you know, we all live in a community, as people, we have a community. But what if we expanded our idea of what is included in a community, what we think of as a community? And he's putting forth that, you know, community really means the trees, the water, the rocks, the land, the soil, the landscape is part of our community. We have a relationship, right? Because we live within this ecosystem. And so thinking of it that way, that really helps me. I applied that to thinking about these private landowners and how they're, you know, trying to do the best for their landscape, and how it benefits all of us in that way. So those are just that's the line of thinking that I've been employing through my public landscapes work and now into, working with residential customers. I think it's very strong, and thinking about that really is helpful. So Catherine retired last year, and we were lucky enough, to start Redbud the same week that the pandemic, kind of happened. And so that was a curveball that we all hit. But we survived, and we are excited to open this spring. And like I said, it was just our first full week, and things are just, we sort of didn't know what to expect last year because it was all online. There were orders by email, and then you would come and curbside pickup and things. So we weren't, we didn't really know what it was going to be like. And it's super busy is what it's like. And that's wonderful because people are really excited to get out there in their yards and to plant and dig in the soil. And it's great. And so we're trying to keep up, and it's good. So we hope that you'll find us and come visit us soon. And I wanted to share one of the top questions. So you probably know, right? So deer, right? This is a question I really, being in Philadelphia, I live in Philadelphia, and, a lot of the work that I did before was, urban, and deer really wasn't, an issue for what we were dealing with in maintaining our spaces. But now this is like the biggest thing, of course, the deer population, it's overpopulated, and we all have to figure out how to manage this pressure. So this is something that really, we have to think about. So is this plant deer resistant? We are working on developing, tools and guides for the customers at the nursery to help them, figure that out. We're also, everyone that works there, we try to, it's a conversation, right? So we're always, answering questions, and we want you to bring your questions in. And we talk about this all the time. I will, I guess, I don't know if you can see this book here. It's a new book that just came out. It's called Deer Resistant Native Plants. And I'll share this, the contact information for this. Deer Resistant Native Plants for the Northeast. And it's by Ruth Rogers Clausen and Greg Tepper. So Greg Tepper is a friend of ours. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Ruth yet. I'm looking forward to it. Ruth wrote about deer resistant plants previously, and she partnered with Greg on this book and focused mostly on native plants. So it's a really great new resource that we have, and it's a nice, colorful, lots of pictures, which is really helpful. So those are a couple things. But what I like to tell people is that it's really about the pressure, the deer pressure in your area and the time of year. So for instance, this time of year, you're going out into your landscape and you're looking around, and you may be discovering the deer damage that happened in the winter. And so what can you do for those plants now? You're looking to basically repair what you can. And so maybe that means pruning, right? So maybe the deer, nibbled off something or ripped off something. And so you're going out there with your sharp pruners and you're making a clean cut, and that's going to help that plant recover. And then, as we move into the summer, you should go back and look at those plants and make sure you're giving them a little extra TLC. Is it mulched? Is it watered? You just want to kind of lessen the stress on that plant so it can recover from that deer damage. And generally, plants that are have a fragrance or aroma, that sort of thing, those are the plants that are going to be less palatable for the deer. And again, this is a sort of a range. It depends on what's available to eat, what time of year it is, whether or not, the deer will go after that plant. But generally, if it has some sort of a fragrance to it, or, some, like aromatic, I'm blanking on any plants right now, but it'll come back. Or spines, or toughness in any way. Those are the plants that would sort of be more resistant. And we can get into like specific lists, but that's generally the kind of plants you're looking for. And just wanted to say that, it isn't an all or nothing sort of thing. It really depends on time of year, what else is available to eat. So that's that. So, we've already started to talk about this a little bit, and I just wanted to introduce, like a new way to think about this idea of public landscape. Public landscape used to mean to me, it was a public space, it's a civic landscape, basically. But if you think about it, this idea of what is a public landscape, what is beneficial to the greater public. And that's how I'm kind of thinking about it now. And this is great. Your slides, Mike, really illustrated some of these facts. I was thinking along the same lines. A lot of people, they come into the nursery, and I love it. I feel like I'm on a quiz show a little bit, because they'll walk up to me and they'll say, okay, I have a slope in the back, and, it's sunny, and then, this and that and the other thing. And, you kind of have to like go through your list and figure out, okay, where do I go from here? So we've been thinking about ways we can respond to this and sort of be a little more proactive on helping people think about these things. And so we want to do programming at the nursery yard that kind of really addresses this. And so, kind of thinking through, okay, what are the typical elements? Let's think about this, and how can we, how can we convey these ideas to the customers a little bit and demonstrate these ideas in the nursery. And these are all things that are sort of evolving, right? We're brand new to the nursery business, so things are evolving there. But let's think through these elements for a minute. So hedges, right? We all love our neighbors, right? But good fences make good neighbors, and it seems like everybody wants to buffer, right? Everybody needs that screening, and that's important, right? That's important to having a comfortable outdoor space, knowing that it's your space. So hedges are really important. And so for that, I would just say that let's think about that. Let's think about diversity, right? Let's think about how our hedges can be hedge rows, right? How can it be sort of a tapestry of things and not just one monoculture? And it doesn't have to be one, monoculture, evergreen monoculture. Like maybe it could be a mix of things that are deciduous and maybe some evergreen in there as well. But that sort of thing is going to provide more value within the ecosystem if we have more diversity in that hedgerow, right? So the small flowering tree in the lawn, right? That's a typical, we can kind of picture that, that flowering tree on a lawn by a suburban house. It's really lovely in the spring for sure. So let's have that tree, but let's also expand it a little bit. So instead of it just being planted in the lawn, let's make a planting bed, right? And maybe there's a ground cover there. So think in layers. So we have our tree, what's under the tree? What's that middle layer, right? And what's that ground cover layer? And in that way, you're going to expand the opportunity for the pollinators, for the birds, for other small wildlife in your yard. You're going to provide cover and forage and, increase that idea of habitat, the opportunity for habitat. Let's see. Oh, foundation planting, right? So is that the planting around the house? So let's think about the purpose of that, and is it serving its purpose, right? If it is just a monoculture, kind of like the hedge, is it an evergreen? What can we do to sort of increase the interest there? Not only for us, like I want to see something in the spring, I want to see something in the summer, I want to see something in the fall, I want something to be happening. So let's think seasonality. How can we bring, interest, year-round interest to things that we see all the time? And that diversity is also going to open up, what it's going to do for the wildlife and the insects as well. And then lawn. We've been talking about lawn already. Mike mentioned it, and yeah, those are some sobering facts of how much lawn we have. I think that lawn. I think what I would like to pose is let's think about how much we need, right? Because a lawn space can be very functional. Like we need space outside to play and to, sit and gather. And so we need that kind of space, but how much of the lawn do we need? for that purpose, right? So think about what purpose it's serving. And then maybe if there's excess, maybe that's where you start to think about, oh, I could have a planting bed there, or I could turn that into a meadow or something else, right? But at the very least, I want to encourage everybody to raise your mower decks to 3 inches. We cut our lawns way too short. If we would just increase the mower deck a little bit, it would go a long way to making that lawn function a little bit better. And also you can leave the cuttings. You don't have to clean them away if they're small enough. They're just going to decompose, and they're going to add nitrogen to your lawn. So those 2 things right there would be a really great way to do it. So I think that was my last slide. I'll just put my contact information up here again. And I think now, Mike, we wanted to go back to your screen, right? We're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'll pull up some
Okay.
slides that we can talk about ideas for alternatives for common species that you might see in the yard that aren't native. Let me see if this will start playing. Let's start at the beginning. Bear with me. Okay. So I kind of went from top to bottom here, but I mean, Julie, feel free to chime in. Just in terms of some of the non-native trees that are pretty common, like Norway maple, Zelkova, tree of heaven, and things you can replace them with, just to give you some ideas. River birch is a great native tree. It's very attractive. It has very distinctive bark. Sugar maple is very beautiful foliage in the fall. Black willows are great. Any willow tree is really attractive, and black willows are a fast-growing native tree. And white oak is another large landscape tree, and one of those keystone species that Doug Tallamy talks about.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any particular favorites of yours, Julie, or things that you guys have that people tend to like.
Yeah, one of my favorites, definitely. Love all these choices, especially the white oak, with lots of oaks. The bicolor oak is another. The swamp white oak is another great one. Also the Nyssa, the black gum, Nyssa sylvatica. That's one of my favorites for sure. And there's the straight species, which is great and can be used, in if you have a wet soil condition or, a little bit drier. But there's also some great cultivars that are really nice and a little bit more formal looking, and can be used in a lawn situation, more residential situation. And they're great. They're great trees.
Yeah, there's another one that gets great fall color.
Mm-hmm.
And then like your medium-sized trees, you see a lot of Japanese maple. Bradford pear is very common and very invasive. Cherries or showy magnolias, but there are native things that can be used. There's a native choke cherry, which has very attractive flowers. American hornbeam is one of my favorite trees. It's sort of an understory forest tree that can be used in the yard as well, and gets nice fall color. Allegheny serviceberry is really pretty right about this time of year. Great flowers. And Ohio buckeye is just a nice tree. It gets large leaves and those really distinctive flowers too.
Sure. Maybe add the silver bell, the Halesia.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
That's a beautiful flowering tree in the spring. And then our dogwoods as well, our flowering dogwoods. And there's some nice cultivars of that as well that are a little resistant to anthracnose and do well.
For the shrubs, so yeah, I mentioned burning bush and barberry earlier as being highly invasive, and they're pretty common. but our native strawberry bush that's our native euonymus species, and it also gets really attractive berries that are pretty. Winterberry holly, it's very attractive berries over the winter. Spice bush and aromatic sumac, fragrant sumac.
Right.
Those are two that have really nice fall color, and spice bush looks really nice in the spring too.
Let's see, what else would be there? Maybe an itea. Great fall color on the Virginia sweet spire. And then all the viburnums. We've got, you know, a handful to choose from. Oh, here they are.
Some of the more showy flowering species. Yeah, nanny berry and black haw viburnum. Wild hydrangeas and a native hydrangea species that also has large white flowers that are attractive.
Right.
Rather than the the Asian hydrangea. So yeah, and then some of the perennial wildflowers. These are those same three keystone species that Doug Tallamy talks about: the sunflowers, asters, and goldenrods. You can get all, there's all kinds of varieties of those that you can play around with.
Yeah, and there is a lot of variety within the asters and within the goldenrods. There's some that can take shade. There's some that can take, a wet condition. There's more dry conditions. So yeah, you could find, an aster and a goldenrod for your spot for sure. Yeah.
And don't overlook grasses. Grasses are a great way to fill space, to add different textures to the garden. Birds use them. You can keep them up over the winter, and birds will use them for cover and feed on the seeds. These are just a few of the examples of some of the native species, but I think grasses are just a great way to kind of add diversity and a different look to the garden.
Right. Yeah, really great for, hot, dry areas. And then the same sort of look, maybe not as tall, but the same kind of grassy look in the sedges will kind of expand that idea into a shady area or a wet area. So you can still think, like, if you like that look of a grass, you can kind of go in that direction with other conditions too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we just kind of open it up for questions? I think there's been some questions in the chat, but
there are lots of great questions in the chat, and some of them were direct messages. So Mike and Julie, you may not be able to see them. So I'll go through some of these, and we're off to a great start. We could probably just do this weekly and continue to talk about all this wonderful information. And so one of the questions is, I'm not sure if Kathy, if you want to jump in and let us know, are native plants less delicious to all our outdoor critters? And she was thinking more of the four-legged animals in mind, not pollinators. So I'm not sure. We can.
Are we thinking in terms of like deer?
I didn't know if this was a pet sort of thing or a wild animal. There's Kathy. Thank you. You're on mute. I don't think. Do you know how to unmute yourself? Okay. It's just not going to work tonight.
That time it did. Yeah, I actually was thinking about, I live in a small area behind me is a copse, and the animals come in and just live there. So the yard that is in front of my condo becomes their bed. And so anything they see in the morning is just breakfast. And I was wondering if the native species, they've eaten my Nandina to the ground. The only thing they haven't touched is the spirea. Everything else they've eaten, and the asters. They didn't do those. So let's go back. Yeah, so are the native plants less delicious, less enticing to the four-legged ones? I have deer, groundhog, all of the bunnies, everything.
Unfortunately, no. I don't think they're any less delicious if they're native.
It'd be so
too
convenient if
bad.
they were. in some
Yeah.
way.
It would be nice. Yeah, no. The deer especially. I mean, the deer basically eat whatever comes up, but they seem to target the native stuff first. And yeah, with things like rodents, groundhogs, and small rodents, rabbits. Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily would it be better off with the native. It's more of a pest control issue overall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of brings it back to that pressure question. It sounds like it's just right there. So the pressure is going to be high all the time in that yard. Is there a way to, I mean, there are some deterrents and things like that,
I've not had success with the deterrents. It doesn't really even slow them down any. And there were 13 deer in my yard last year. And when all those does come back this year, they usually bring triplets, not single fawns. So it's a problem.
Yeah. And it's a problem that's a little bit beyond, what we can do in our yards. I mean, that kind of pressure, that's a problem. And that just illustrates, how much, the encroachment has happened, of our space into their space, and then their populations, because there's no natural predators, right? So it's a perfect storm of events, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I wondered about poinsettias. I know they're not typically out in the summer, but I wonder if it would be possible. I can save them over from the holidays. I've done that. I just wondered if that might be a suitable green flowering plant, bush plant.
Well, not hardy here.
Yeah, just a summer plant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I haven't tried that. That's I guess it would grow in the summer. It is poisonous, I believe, right? So yeah.
I don't think they bite it more than once.
Yeah.
Kathy, you'll have to give it a try and let us know how that goes, maybe.
I have one I was able to salvage, and I am putting it out. It won't have the red brats, but that's fine. I've done this in the past, and I've not done it here. So I'll try it. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Next up, have nurseries, garden centers become more aware of the need for native species? I think that's why we have Redbud is so wonderful, because I don't know, I don't think they have.
It's yes, I think so. I think it's happening more and more. I think it's getting out into the mainstream. When Catherine, the founder of Redbud, when she started almost 20 years ago, she developed a niche that she helped develop the market for native plants, because around that time there were native plants we could do by mail order. You could buy them mail order, but there weren't a lot of places where you could go and actually see them in person and learn from someone who knows about them. So Catherine was, a trailblazer in that way, and started Redbud, for that reason, to establish like a place where you could go and see them and to learn about them. And she developed a really loyal following. And we have, we've been meeting all these wonderful people that have been shopping at Redbud for years, and it's a wonderful thing to see. But I do think now that you can go into many nursery centers, not just specifically native, and find a good number of native plants, and maybe not the education piece, the knowledgeable staff that goes along with it, but I think that the products are there. The plants are getting out there because people are seeing the value of them.
Great.
Mhm.
Can you guide us to something that isn't lawn, but is dog friendly and maybe not just dirt in the winter? So some sort of cover of some sort,
Yeah.
sounds like.
Hmm.
Mike, do you have any areas that you've converted into like a sedge lawn, or because I know there are some sedges that can be used as like a lawn substitute.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I haven't done any myself, but yeah, I wonder if yeah, like does Carex pennsylvanica, can that be
Right.
kind of trimmed that way? That would be, yeah, a shrub lawn
Yeah.
would be a good suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. What's a couple other that I can remember? Carex, sociabilis. It sounds like social sedge. I think that's one that you can also handle that way. Leavenworthii, Carex leavenworthii. There's a handful that you can use. Some that will take more sun, some that will take more shade. And Carex kind of looks like grass. It's a little like long grass. And you can mow it a couple of times a year if you want, or you can just kind of let it be. So that's an option instead of lawn. And you could maybe mix them so you'd have more than one species there. So that's a possibility.
Great. All right. Is river birch good in wet areas?
Yes.
Mhm.
I think we have them along at Kirkwood. There's a bunch
Yeah,
along.
yeah,
Crimson
there's a lot
there,
of
right?
river birch at Kirkwood along the stream. Yeah, river birch loves wet areas.
Mhm.
Black
Yeah.
willow I mentioned too is a great one for wet areas. Any
Right.
willow
And,
shrubs.
and some of the other birches that we have, the yellow birch and the black birch and the gray. People ask a lot for paper birch, but paper birch, I'm curious about what you think, Mike. We find that maybe around here it's not so great. Like maybe up in the Poconos, the paper birch might work better, or it's higher altitude, cooler climates. Around here, it seems like it's a little too warm and humid, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, you don't see it occurring much.
Right.
Plant it, but yeah, I think you're right that some of the other species work better for this specific area.
Right. And the gray birch, even though it sounds like it's going to be gray, that does have a very light bark as well. So it's similar to the paper.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you. And do you have winter berry holly in stock? We're just gonna start online shopping.
Yes, we do.
Right? Well, that's
So
good.
you know your winter berries, right? You've got your little ones and your big ones, and you have your boys and your girls. So you have to think about your pollinator, and you need your pollinator. So you need your Jim Dandy for your red sprites, and you need your Southern Gentleman for your winter reds. So there you go.
I'll be over. Thank you.
Okay. And also we got in some straight species, Ilex verticillata, and we're holding some back because, they come into us from the growers and they're not sexed, they don't say these are female, these are male. So we're waiting until they flower, and then we can see from the flower, we can see which ones are male and female, and then we'll mark them. So we'll have a few of those as well.
Great.
Perfect.
And Caitlin, actually, one of the trust staff members from the bird and the farm team did just make a comment how great they are for the birds. And around the RCC here, it really is amazing to watch how they did all disappear. I mean, just such great food. Lots of frenzying over here.
Right. Just a couple more comments about the hollies. So the winterberry hollies, the red berries, I understand. I want to hear from the bird people on this. So I understand that the red berries are attractive to the birds, but the yellow berry ones, not so much. I'd like to know more about that from a bird person. And then also the berries, there's some cultivars that are pretty big. And so I'm not sure that those can be utilized by the birds as much as the regular species, So that's something that we'd like to know more about so we can, kind of point people in the right direction there. So maybe you could hook me up with some bird people to
Oh
get
yeah,
those
we've got,
answers.
starting next week, they're here every morning. Well,
Okay,
right,
great.
I shouldn't say every morning.
Mhm.
Absolutely, that could be our next program, all about, which we've done. So
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
so from Shannon, my yard is dappled sunlight all day in summer, and I'm afraid that goldenrod might not even grow well. But are there grasses that will tolerate these conditions? I don't know if that's a quick answer or
I would point back to the sedges, the carex,
great.
but there are a couple of goldenrods that will take some shade. The zigzag goldenrod and another one.
Or is it,
Is it Gentiana?
which one's Flexicalis?
That's the zigzag, right? And then
Yeah, Ginsea, yeah.
the cassia,
That's what I was trying to think of.
yeah, the blue, is it blue
stem,
stem? So they'll take shade. Yeah.
All right. A Pachysandra question. Is it worth replacing? And any suggestions of what to replace it with?
Mm.
I guess I guess it depends how much of it there is, and what you might want to replace it with. If you want to kind of maintain that same just sort of basic ground cover, maybe not. If you want to kind of transition to more of more like perennial or more even shrubs, I might say just don't bother. Just kind of plant that stuff in, let it kind of shade out some of the Pachysandra. It'll survive above it. But yeah, I guess you could remove. It's hard to get rid of. Depending on how much. If it's a pretty contained area, you might be able to just kind of dig it out and replace it. But yeah, again, it kind of depends.
I would agree. It's a couple of people actually just today were talking about it. And I think it's a process, right? So it depends on how much it is. For anytime you're thinking about, transitioning from, a non-native landscape to a native landscape, it's a process. It's not as if we're saying, go and rip your stuff out. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, think about how you can add these things in. And, if something fails, or if you do want to remove something, think about how much is realistic. Like Mike was saying, it depends on what you want to do in that space. So yeah, it's definitely a process. You don't want to do it wholesale.
All right. I'll come help you, Rebecca. Rebecca's my neighbor, so I know I can actually imagine her Pachysandra. All right, here's one for you. This is like Jeopardy. This is interesting. Okay, what is a rough estimate to convert an acre of grass to wildflower and grasses?
I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean like how many do you need, or?
Yeah, well, Rick, if you wanna jump in and expand a little on your question.
Sure, no problem. We've got a bunch of, basic lawn area now. And, when I typed that question, I guess I should have added, yeah, I'm thinking about cost dollar wise. And now I'm thinking about, expectations and managing expectations and how long it will take to convert an acre of grass or so, just using that as a yardstick, no pun intended, in transferring, and what are my expectations? Is it going to take 2 years, 3 years to transfer over into a more meadowish kind of feel, a la like out in front of Willistown Conservation Trust office?
Well, Mike, you probably have a better answer. I'll just quickly say that, you know, if the idea is to establish a meadow in that where you have grass, it will take a little bit, you know, it takes like at least 3 years is my understanding. And then after that, you know, the management goes down, the time that you have to put in. Um, so, you know, there is that. It is intensive. The management of it in the first couple of years is more intensive, and then it kind of gets a little easier as it becomes established. But the cost question, it depends on the process, right? So it depends on if you're going to seed things in, or if you're going to plug things in, or if maybe you're going to put larger plants in, or maybe it's a combination. So there's ways to be more economical. But it's definitely it needs to be planned out, and you have to figure out what you have already, you know, what you need to get rid of, that sort of thing. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just in terms of cost and time does depend a bit on, yeah, how you're going to address it, whether with seed or plugs. But yes, it will take a couple years, like Julie said. So you would start to see some changes pretty quickly, I would think. But then, you know, it kind of depends what exists there in the seed bank, what you have. So yeah, once you kind of do that initial work of getting the plugs or the seeds or both in, and you start to see how it responds, typically, you know, for the first couple of years, you'll, you know, go back and mow over it, probably twice a year, just to knock back any woody things that are coming in. And then you might need to go in and do some, you know, manual removal of invasives. But yeah, the nice thing is once you spend that initial effort, after a few years, once you get the native things established, it really just takes care of itself. The native plants are going to proliferate, they're going to dominate, and it'll just kind of self-sustain.
Right. There's so many great questions here, and I would love to get to all of them. A quick winter aconite question. Anything to outcompete that, or any suggestions there?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Might have to get back to you on that one.
All right. Now we all know where to find you. And
Oh, yes.
I'll share Mike's contact information too, if that's okay, in the future. What was the yellow flower that is non-native, and how do you get rid of it? I think that might be.
Oh, the one
The
lesser celandine.
Mhm.
That's a great question. If you figure out how to get rid of it, please let me know. I don't know if it's possible. if you have a small amount, you could try pulling it. It has like these tiny little bulbs that just get everywhere. You know, if you pull it out, you'll see them. So it spreads like crazy. I don't like to recommend herbicide, but that would be the only way really to get rid of it. But again, you know, if you have a large amount, is it really worth it? Probably not. So
It's more of a management question, right? So it's
managing than removing.
Mhm.
Really.
Mhm.
But yeah, if it's somewhere where you might want to move more towards a meadow type habitat, then you know, once you get some of those larger perennial plants established, they will just kind of start to outcompete the lesser celandine after a while, and it'll just kind of move out on its own, ideally. So
There is just a continuation here from Shannon. Do you know of any state or local programs for homeowners or municipalities to remove the plant? It sounds like there may not be any. Maybe there are some projects going on out there. I think that there's probably a lot of non-natives invasives that we can put on that list.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I mean, the state has a noxious weed. I mean, they're more so worried about the agriculture end of things than the ecology, really. But so yeah, I don't know of any like state-sponsored programs that, in terms of helping remove things or providing any benefit for it.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
It is.
can
There should be.
figure it out.
It's a good thought.
Mhm.
A tree that came into my purview just last year, is the pawpaw tree. Is that good to plant in this area?
Yes, yeah. More than one.
Yeah,
In a shade, it likes a dappled, shade condition. Mike, are you familiar with the pollination? Can
only a little. Yeah, only just
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you need both, and it takes the male to pollinate the female to get the fruit. So,
Mhm.
um,
And also the genetic diversity, like it's I guess if you have one colony, you need another. I think this is correct. Yeah, so the pollination is a little tricky. It's so having more than one is going to definitely increase your chances. Yeah. Mhm,
it's interesting.
mhm.
Great. Well, there are a few more questions here, and I think we are going to start to wrap it up now, but we will be sending, again, some updated information from this evening. We do have some great resources on the Trust website as well. So please do go to our website. I am going to share my screen just briefly so that you guys can see what we have coming up as well. What I will bring up is that we have Wildflower Week that actually is in July, and there's some questions about we talked about our meadows a lot, and the actual offices. We're at the Rushton Conservation Center on Delchester and Goshen Road, if you're familiar with the area, and then our office is also open for people to visit, and it's just gorgeous in the summertime, a beautiful meadow with just amazing native plants. So look out for that in July, and that's when Redbud will be back with us. Lots of great resources coming, and you can actually come out, touch, feel, see the pollinators really jump into this whole scene that we've sort of been describing here tonight, along with some other great events coming up here. Next, we're here like every Thursday this month, where we're just getting a last go of our virtual programming here before it warms up too much. So next week we're talking about, we have a really fun, really dynamic guest coming, Alize Carrere, and she's going to be talking about climate change and how people from all over the planet, not just here in Willistown, are adapting to that. So that is going to be a really interesting conversation. That's next week. And then coming up, we have Kiss the Ground film. If you have not checked that film out on Netflix yet, it really is interesting to look at. And we're going to talk with our farm staff about why soil health matters. And then we're in person for some food on April 30th with Cadence, who's located down in the city, and North by Texas Barbecue. We're bringing them out to Willistown for all of you, as well as, it's not listed there, but Deer Creek Malt will have beer and other malt products here as well. So come out for a pickup. And then the next morning, come back and you can come to our Rushton Woods Preserve open house. So some in-person events coming up here at Rushton, which we're super excited about. And if you've never visited, the open house is an amazing way to see all of the important work that the Trust is doing. You'll have an overview of bird conservation, what we do at the farm, the study of agroecology, and then of course our watershed protection program as well, sort of in one day. So that's really fun. So please register for that with time slots and COVID safety protocols, of course, in place. So that is it for tonight. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you back here soon. Thank you, Julie. We'll see you at Redbud soon, now that you're open all the time. Mike, you can find him at our preserves almost every day of the week, I can imagine.
Great.
So please visit us soon.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.